At some point, our application will need more complex logic. We may want to perform operations on data, or simply separate some code into a reusable unit. Vue gives us the methods option that we can use in the config object to store all the functions we want to use in a component. The methods option expects an object as its value. Inside it, we can define comma-separated functions. It's important to note that the methods we define are only available to the current component, even if that component is imported into another. To invoke a method in the template, we call it inside double curly braces. As an example, let's create a method that returns a greeting message. Then, we'll invoke the method in the template in double curly braces. When we run the example in the browser, we'll see the greeting message. Now, let's say we want to personalize the greeting example with a username defined as a data property. When we try to save the file, Vue raises an error. The error is a bit misleading because it tells us that username is not defined. When we reference a data property, we need to use the this keyword. Let's fix the example and change username to this.username. This time, the project compiles, and we see the greeting shows correctly in the browser. At first, it's a bit confusing because we know that this refers to the calling object. So, it shouldn't work outside of the methods object. The reason it works is because Vue creates a global application object behind the scenes, placing the data properties and methods in the same scope, and therefore, of the same calling object. Just like regular methods in JavaScript, we can add parameters to methods in Vue. As an example, let's change our greeting method to have a parameter called name. Then, we'll add a name as argument when we invoke it in the template. If we run the example in the browser, we'll see the personalized greeting. Although we can, and will use arrow functions in Vue, there may be certain situations where we can run into some problems. To demonstrate, let's convert our greeting method from earlier into an arrow function. Our app will compile without issue and display the greeting as expected. But, if we try to access a data property with this, we'll run into a problem. The application still compiles, but nothing shows on the page in the browser. If we inspect the page in the browser's DevTools and open the console, we'll see an error. The error means that the this keyword is undefined, and it relates to how JavaScript works, not Vue specifically. Earlier we mentioned that Vue creates a global object in the background that puts the data properties and methods in the same scope. Now, let's imagine that the methods option in the example is the global object that Vue creates behind the scenes. When we invoke a regular function, the value of this equals to the global object. So this has access to username and will work as expected. An arrow function doesn't have its own this. An arrow function inherits its this from the closest non-arrow parent function. But, because there is no outer non-arrow function, there is no this it can inherit from. Therefore, the arrow function's this is undefined, and we get the error in the console. A good rule to remember is to use regular functions as outer functions, and arrow functions as inner ones, if there is a need. In most cases though, the code can be refactored in a way that removes the need for an arrow function. Some students encounter a situation where they want to display the result of a function on the page, with string interpolation, but it displays function native code instead. That happens when we try to reference a function instead of invoking it. We reference a function by excluding the parentheses at the end. Callback functions are referenced. We invoke a function by adding parentheses at the end. Standard functions are invoked. To fix the issue, we simply add the parentheses to the function name to invoke it. Now, the page displays the message from the function as intended. This usually happens because students read or hear somewhere that they don't have to use parentheses if the function doesn't contain any parameters. That's true, but only in certain situations. For example, when the function is passed as a value to certain directives. In that case, we technically send our function to a parent function that runs it behind the scenes, so it works. We haven't covered event handling yet, but let's use it as an example. In this example, we use the vue directive to handle a click event. The two methods define what should happen when the click event fires. They don't have any parameters, and their directive allows us to reference them, so it works. Don't worry if you don't understand the example at the moment. What's important is that methods should be invoked, not referenced, when using string interpolation. In the next video, we'll learn how to handle native DOM events in Vue. Thank you for watching, we'll see you in the next one.